Welcome to Dogpoint Podcast, episode 11. Today we have a very special guest. We have Nicola Ferguson from the UK, author of The Force-Free Dilemma, a very good book. We get into that in a minute. And why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit something about yourself?
Well, hi, I'm absolutely delighted to be on the Dogpoint Podcast. Thank you very much for inviting me and Isabel, who just sneaked behind me. My name's Nicola Ferguson. I'm a dog trainer from the UK. I specialise mainly in Rottweilers and large breeds, high drive breeds. I'm very passionate about IGP, but I also train assistance dogs. I train everything from medical alert dogs to puppies to protection dogs, from Yorkshire Terriers to Rottweilers to Canny Corsos. So I like pretty much every dog. I think I fell in love with dogs at a very young age and I've never stopped. So I'm really delighted to be here.
All right. So for our listeners, I want to put a little context to this. We met on somebody else's post talking about dog training and training methods. And in the course of the conversation, you offered to send me this book for review. And I was delighted to receive it. And I'm more than 3/4 through it. I have not completely finished yet. I will finish it by tomorrow. But I must say, I have read a great deal of dog training books in my lifetime. But this one is packed with more sense than many of them combined. So I would like to thank you for writing it. Because it also, in a very part humorous and part technical way, dissects the dilemma that we are all facing in the industry and dispels a lot of notions that people have. And I'm so grateful for this because I live in the Caribbean, so I don't get too much of it, but I get it in comments. And the idea, if I always picture my dog in the hands of one of those guys, those force-free trainers, and then the first thing that comes to mind is their hospital visit.
Yeah.
That is the only thing I can see. Because the idea of raising my dog completely force-free would be ludicrous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ludicrous. He is one of those dogs that, and you spoke in your book about it with the offensive drive, right? Who kind of enjoys the challenge and a little fight here and there. And so to put it mildly, right? And if you don't know how to handle a dog like this in terms of letting him know that, no, this is not going to fly with me, then that can be a huge problem. Because the moment that he feels that he has one up on you, he will let you know that.
Yes.
And I can see a lot of Rottweiler owners that I know, and I know their dogs. If they had this dog, they would be in trouble.
Yes, very much so. And I think partly I started thinking about writing this book because of my new IGP dog that I have. And she's a very, very high drive. And it just made me think how many people would really, really be in trouble if they had her. And I think we're very much letting our large high drive dogs down. We're trying to breed out a lot of the, offensive aggression within some of them, which is completely ruining the breed. We're creating soft, very nervous dogs that are not a true representative of the breed we all grew up with and love. And it's, I think, getting a lot of owners into trouble as well. They genuinely believe that they must do as these extremists say. And I mean, I had one lady that's broken her leg twice who'd been pulled over by her Rottweiler because she believed the only solution is having a flat collar on. Now that's obviously, I can't imagine breaking your leg twice. And all for want of a tool that's actually suitable for the dog in question. And as soon as he was introduced to a pinch collar, understood it, he just shrugged and said, okay, fine, I understand what you want now. I understand there's consequences if I behave badly. I'm not going to do it. And, we got some really good engagement with the owner, and that was the end of it. It was literally 1 or 2 training sessions, and she doesn't have to worry about broken legs now. She understands how to train him, how to engage him. He also understands that there are consequences to his actions. And it was that simple, whereas she went for various other trainers who had said, well, if he sees a squirrel, just put some cheese on the floor. Well, but a high drive dog, cheese isn't going to do it compared to a squirrel. And, that's why she broke her leg twice. And I think that's really tragic. We're really letting owners down because she genuinely felt she was doing the right by her dog, but she was injuring herself. And this was very nearly a dog that could have been put into rescue and could have spent his days in a cage.
Yes, or worse.
Yeah, or worse.
Or worse. Because when you have a dog like this that's powerful and people have trouble to manage, we all know what happens in most shelters.
Yes.
With dogs like this. They don't make it. Yeah, because people will be afraid and because they don't know the dog from puppy. And so nobody wants to touch him with a 10-foot pole. And then if he's there for a few months and nobody came forward to adopt him, then, euthanasia is on the table for this dog, unfortunately. And it's a shame. It's a shame because, a lot of them are good dogs. They're just being let down by humans.
Yes.
And it is something that, as I said, we don't have that particular problem here where I live necessarily, but I get a lot of people talking to me online and asking questions and looking for advice and book virtual sessions and all of that. And they're saying, I went to 2 trainers and my dog's behavior has absolutely not changed.
Yeah.
They spent thousands of dollars and got nowhere. And then within a couple of sessions, you can fix a problem. And they get upset and angry after the fact because they realize they've been hard.
Yeah.
And that is really what it boils down to, right? Now there is some trainers that take their time and try not to use any corrections as far as possible. And they do great work. I don't want to cry down all force-free trainers. There are some really good ones out there. There are some that have won multiple agility world championships and so forth, like Susan. But they're the minority. The majority is just an extremist side that it is either our way or the highway. And if you don't train our way, you are a bad person and you're this and you're that. And that is just ludicrous to somebody like me who has been working with dogs since I'm 7 years old.
Yeah.
The people that are a quarter my age, they come up and talk that talk and they say, what life experience do you have? Forget dog training. What life experience do you have at 20 to be talking that type of talk?
I think that's one of the big problems. People will look for trainers. They'll look on a website. It'll be a very flashy, nice website. There'll be sort of 30 certifications of dog training in every aspect, on aggression, on separation anxiety and training. And then they'll book an appointment, and a 21-year-old spotty teenager, or someone turns up who's all their certifications have been online tests. They've never actually taken hold of the lead and handled the dog. And the person is, unfortunately, they don't have solutions to the problem because they've never practically dealt with it. They've read about it, but then when they're suddenly confronted with a large dog that stares them in the eye and says no, they're frightened and they don't know what to do. So they throw their cheese on the ground, and the dog just keeps staring at them, and they say, okay, thank you, I've got my money, I'm off now. And they leave the owner with nothing except for, confusion and a bill that they've paid. And I think a lot of trainers that, like yourself or like myself, we've been around for a long time, we've trained a lot of dogs, and we don't necessarily have we don't necessarily have a 4 or 5 year degree in behaviour or countless certificates, but what we do have is countless dogs successfully trained with happy owners. But unless you're very media savvy, it can be very difficult to persuade people. And I think particularly now when the extremists have taken over, very, very much so. And we're in a situation where we have countries in Europe that have banned certain tools. And of course, the good trainers are still using them. And people can't understand why their trainer can't train their dog. You know, and they're going to say IGP competitions, they're still using these tools behind the scenes, openly saying, well, no, we don't use tools. And then it's giving the impression that tools aren't needed, when in fact that isn't actually how the dog is trained at all.
Yeah,
And
there's some
it's
people
still
that
a very big mess.
there's some people that drive across the border to another
Yeah.
country where it's not banned, train their dogs and come back.
Yes, yeah.
And so whatever problems they encountered doing the training at home, they iron out those problems in another country where it's okay to use the tools and then come back and continue training at home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
you
that's
know.
absolute madness.
You know.
Really, I'm always in the same situation because e-collars are legal in England and I'm maybe 10 miles away from Wales where e-collars are banned.
Wow.
You know, so, you know, conceivably, you know, you could get a client that needs a recall who might come to me 10 miles over the border, train the dog and go back. But, you know, it's not fair. It's ridiculous that our
It isn't.
hypothetical line should mean some people can train their dogs and some people can't. And that, you know, even with an e-collar trained dog, you know, you've not got that emergency brake if something does happen and you've not got an e-collar on. And they very quickly realise, you know, unless the training is kept updated, that, you know, consequences are gone, especially a smart dog.
Yeah.
It's like people saying, oh, if you keep them on a long line and teach them recall, once you take the long line off, they'll still have a recall. Well, the dogs aren't really that stupid.
No.
You know, they have got a brain.
Yeah. They're
And
way
very
smarter than
aware.
that. And
Yeah.
and the reality is really, if a tool is used correctly, right, it's if I'm putting the e-collar on my dog Force, or if I'm putting a pinch collar on him, he's pushing his head through. He can't wait for me to put it on fast enough because for him it represents, oh, we're training.
Yeah, exactly.
And he gets all happy. His tail is wagging and he's like, hurry up, put it on, let's go.
Yeah.
And, you know, the perception is being created out there that when you use those tools, your dog shuts down and gets depressed and this and the other. My collar goes from 1 to 127. I'm using it at 12.
Yeah,
I put it on my arm or my neck and barely feel it.
I can put
You know,
mine on.
but they want to label me as abusive because I'm using an e-collar on occasion. I don't use it all the time, but there are certain things that I will use it with him for where he's off leash in the yard or somewhere else, and I need to remind him of something. You know, and yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I mean,
looking
I can put it on my tongue on the stimulus I use on my dog. So, do you know what I mean? It's a 5. That's what she can feel, and she doesn't need it. She very, very. Well, I've got 2 dogs, but very, very rarely need it. But I can actually put it on my tongue, and there's no pain and discomfort. So how can you tell me that something I can put on my tongue is causing my dog fear, pain, and discomfort when the dog's body language is showing nothing but happiness, and it's so mild that my tongue, I'm not screaming in pain. It's just like I can barely feel it. People don't realise the training that goes into using an e-collar. And they think we're sort of, it's like an act of God, we're sort of electrocuting the dog, and nothing could be further from the truth and when it's properly used. But unfortunately, you know, I'll say to people, you know, do you want to see it on my tongue? Do you want to see how you can start turning it up if you like, and I'll keep it on my tongue? And they'll say, no, we're not interested, don't want to see it, it's cruel, we won't listen. But so it's very, very closed-minded, because even if tools I don't particularly like, such as head collars, I'm open-minded about it. And if a client says, look, this really works for my dog, I'm not going to say,
Great.
well, take it off or I won't train you. I'll say, well, if it works for you, the dog understands it and both parties are happy, that's fine. Maybe you need help with something else. But I'm not going to start throwing my weight around and saying, you must do it my way. because every dog is different and every client is different, and it's wrong to disrespect the difference we have in our dogs and in our own personalities.
Correct. I have met quite a few dogs where the owners were using Halties. And I said, okay, well, that is what you've been working with. Show me what your dog is doing. And when they try to put it on, the dog is doing its utmost best to avoid it.
Yes.
They hate it.
They hate it. They absolutely hate it.
And even when it's on, they're constantly pawing at it and try to get it off. And
yeah, I mean, it's not. Is it?
You
I
know.
mean, you've got it tight enough to have an effect. You're pressing on the very sensitive nerves and fascia on the base. It's not. So you always have this tight object that's putting pressure on your nerves. How can it be comfortable? And a lot of the assistance dog organisations that are starting to insist on using a Haltie, which I think is totally wrong. They're putting it on very, very young puppies in an attempt to get them habituated to it from such a young age, or not having problems with the dog constantly trying to pull it off. And I feel if you're saying ethically, I am kinder because I don't use force, how can you justify doing that? That doesn't make sense to me as a trainer or as a human being.
Yeah, or if you have a young Dalmatian that sees something and just takes off, a split second notice, and you have a Haltie on this dog, and he just jumps into it and takes off, you can risk spinal injuries. How is that force free?
Yes.
You know, and on the whole, the whole concept to me is flawed. I don't know that there's any creature on Earth, down to single cell organisms, that goes through life force free and without consequences to actions. That is how all of them learn. All.
Everything. It's against nature to say. It's against nature to say that, you know, some pain, discomfort, whatever you want to call it, that fear. You know, we learn. I mean, you know, a dog will only jump up on the cooker and put its paw on a hot plate once. Now, I'm not saying you leave your hot plate on to teach your dog to jump up, but we learn, and that's one short, sharp shock. But that's how learning occurs in nature. If you know, in nature, if you made one, you can make one bad mistake and get killed. So you have to learn very, very quickly. And of course, we must use a lot of encouragement and a huge amount of engagement with the dogs to make the training fun. And, you know, and of course, dogs learn, everyone learns a lot quicker when they're having fun and through play. But there also has to be consequences. You can't have life without consequences. And it's totally against nature to think that we can. And also, I think as well, unskilled trainers who put themselves over as force-free, they're using food, using things like food withholding, or you can't have a dog that does something wrong and you ask it and give it food because not giving it food would be unkind. So of course they're using consequences by not giving them food, but without giving the dog direction, the dog can get extremely frustrated and just not be able to work out why he's not getting rewarded, because the dog often thinks he's doing the right thing. He's doing the right thing for him for going after a squirrel, or if you're training him, say, in obedience, he thinks he's offering you the right behaviour to get rewarded. And when you withhold that reward, but you never ever give guidance as to how to get the correct behaviour and how to get the reward, you're creating a whole lot of frustration for the dog, which can be far, far more unfair than giving guidance, because a correction doesn't have to be fearful, harsh, or anything else. It's guidance. It's saying to the dog, well, that's not right. And the dog will say, okay, I'll try this. Great, good dog, big reward. But they don't see it like that. You know, for a dog, they much prefer things to be black and white. They don't want confusion. And when you have a black and white life, the dog is far more happy, far more settled. He doesn't have to worry about things. Whereas when you're very grey, dogs do worry. They become very anxious. But this isn't a part of the force-free, sort of extremist force-free agenda that people are told about and that they see.
And then you have the issue with competing motivators, right?
Yes.
So if I have a dog with medium food drive, that might be enough for obedience. But when I take the dog out of the training room, out of the house, into the public, and there is this squirrel, food is the last thing on his mind.
Yes.
He doesn't care that you have a whole bag of treats in your pouch. that becomes secondary in a split second because I want that squirrel.
Yeah.
So and even if you turn them around and which in itself is an aversive, and then walked in the other direction, and he turns around and wants to see where that squirrel is going, he's not gonna eat the food in your hand. He's not gonna be interested in it.
Yeah.
And there was one trainer that works his dog in protection and IGP, and he had his Malinois on a sleeve with a decoy, and then told the dog out and dumped a whole bag of food over the dog. You saw that? And it did nothing to the dog. The dog was just continued biting.
Yeah. I mean, we could do that with our dogs.
It was a parody, but it was very powerful in its message.
Yes.
There are certain things that no amount of food will get the dog to not do something. If the competing motivator is stronger than the food drive, it's game over with that method.
Exactly. And that's the way a lot of the extremist force freak trainers do deceive people, because all of their training is done in a quiet, very, very quiet training room. So they can show all these tricks, all these nice behaviours, but they never take the dog out in public. So you'll see the dog doing wonderful things, but you won't see the dog walking down the street in public, never mind next to the squirrel tree, especially if it's a high drive dog. Or if they do, they will starve the dog for 4 or 5 days. I've heard of the worst I've heard is 14 days for search and rescue dog. Yeah, 14 days because we wouldn't go on rubble, but to search. But they might starve it for 2 or 3 days, and then you see the shot from behind, and they're carrying food or a ball, and the dog is so hungry, or by this time it's quite willing to give a nice performance for the camera. People don't realise it's very easy to trick the camera into thinking a certain way, but that's not not really how life is, or behind the scenes things are very different.
Yeah.
And some people will deprive water as well to calm a dog down. And how they can say this is kinder than giving a consequence for bad behaviour, I just don't know. Ethically, I don't think you can say that.
Yeah, a quick tug on the leash and no. And it's over, and the dog behaves and then gets the food for stopping the behaviour. Then the dog knows, okay, this one is not so nice, this one is much better, so I want to replicate this one because it's better, I get food.
Yes, and the dog's making an active choice. So the dog is choosing the right behaviour because he understands consequence. So it's an actual choice on the part of the dog, which I think is far more powerful for the dog, and it builds resilience. A dog needs to have resilience in life. Just thinking life is all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, that isn't the way life is for any of us. And it's not the way life is for a dog. And unfortunately, a dog that doesn't have consequences, that is high drive or large, eventually they do end up in a shelter, and ultimately some of them get put to sleep for nothing more than being misunderstood and not having someone that actually knows how to train them. And that's really tragic.
I compare it a little bit like as kids, we were playing this game where you get blindfolded and then you have to find something hot and cold. Right?
Yeah.
And you just leave out hot. You just leave out one of them.
Yeah.
It takes you so much longer to find it if you ever find it, because you have no reference point. And it's a little bit like that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's only yes and food, and there's no. So how is the dog supposed to figure out which one is the better choice?
Exactly.
By living his entire life in a controlled environment where everything is managed. So I've heard of people picking a route in their town to walk their dog where there is no dogs at the gate that they have to pass because they can't get their dog's reactivity under control.
Yes. And very commonly here, people will walk at midnight. So there's no one around, no dogs around. Although saying that, I quite like walking at night myself because my dogs will come back, but because I have two, very good recall, they're social dogs, but because I have 2 Rottweilers, if anything happens, it's always going to be me that has the blame. So I often like walking at night where it's peaceful and, that other people walk because they have no control. And it's really tragic to think that people aren't choosing to go out at night because they like it. I mean, I have autism, so I really like peace and quiet. But that's my choice, an active choice. Whereas people really don't. It's not much of a choice when your life is, well, I can go out at midnight to walk the dog, or I can go out at 7 o'clock and I've got this ranting, raving lunatic on the end of the lead and everyone's staring at me and people are calling the police and say, do you know what I mean? That isn't an actual choice. You've been forced to go out at that time. And it's, like
Right.
you, I have a lot of people that have been through a couple of trainers that have sort of think, well, there's no hope. And I've sort of said, well, come and see me. Don't pay me if I can't make some sort of sense to you or a difference. And, with 1 or 2 sessions, the dog understands. And because the problem was never a problem, really, it was a dog that had a person problem, not a person that had a dog problem. And it's sad that we're getting more and more people like that have, paid out good money and had all the worry to think that maybe they'll have to give their dog up because the behaviour is escalating. And, the longer it's left, that, the more self, especially with reactivity, longer it's left, the more self-rewarding it becomes when the barking and adrenaline really gets the dog worked up and he's enjoying it. He's enjoying this behaviour and, and it just goes on and on. Then they go out at midnight and dog and person aren't really, and then they'd stop going out at midnight because it's winter and it's cold. And, it's just a disaster, really, for want of saying no.
Yeah.
Just
And
no.
then the, and then you have a situation in the US and Canada where some dogs have to get training court ordered because they have a bite history and they have an ultimatum. So they have 3 to 4 weeks to get their behavior under control, or they will be ordered euthanized by the court. Yeah. So imagine such a dog goes to a force-free trainer. It has certain death.
I know.
That is certain death. I know 2 trainers in Canada that deal with cases like this. And within 2 days, they have the dogs behave and so forth. And they demonstrate that to a court-appointed person. And the dogs live and get back to their owners.
Yeah.
But if the force-free ideology takes over more, then what happens to those cases? Then it's just more dogs in the shelter, more dogs euthanized, and then we can only breed, little squishy dogs that have no mind on their own because we have to accommodate a bunch of people that can't say no.
Yes, and unfortunately, I do believe this is a long-term agenda. I mean, when I wrote my book, one of the scientific studies I looked at said it was biased. It wanted to say corrections are bad, and it ended up saying, well, some dogs need corrections. That's the only way to train them, and we should not be breeding dogs that need corrections. Now, and we've got bodies. There's a certain, I can't remember the name now, but there's a veterinary group that's been set up to try and prevent the breeding of what they believe are unhealthy dogs. So brachycephalic, long back. But also, I noted dogs with big shoulders and heads. So they want to get rid of Mosslers, they want to get rid of Rottweilers, Mastiffs, and breeds like that, and high drive breeds. There's an agenda that, as you just said, is pushing towards getting rid of a dog with any, I like small dogs, pet dogs are nice, toy dogs, whatever. But there's an agenda to get rid of our big, high drive working dogs and just have a collection of small, weak, fearful dogs that won't go out more than a metre away from their owner because they're too scared. So they don't really need a recall because they're hiding behind their owner's legs all the time. And if all the dogs are like that, then, they might yap at each other. But, that's what people seem to want. And not everyone wants that. And it's not fair to say, well, this is the only dog you can have because it's all we can control with a couple of bits of cheese.
And if that's where it's heading, then we can also say goodbye to search and rescue dogs.
Yes,
because how do you test for dogs that can do this type of work? If you put yourself in the dog's position, there is a lot of unstable ground. There is steel, glass, smoke. There is all the ingredients to make a human scared and change diaper.
What?
And we're expecting a dog to go in there and under there and crawl through nooks and crannies to find people so that we can then dig them out. And the type of dog it takes to do that is a high drive, very confident dog. And if we can't test for that through things like IGP, for instance, or Munduring, or any of those dog sports and protection sports, PSA, then how do we get dogs suitable for this if we can't test for it?
Yeah.
It's just like in IGP when they did away with the pretend stick it.
Yeah.
They were not actually touching the dog. They were just pretending, and now they can't even do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, in training we do, and we do still use them, and
they're padded and flexible.
Padded, yeah, you could batter me over the head with it. I wouldn't really care. And when a dog's working, it's not hurting the dog. It's just it's just a sort of, it's nothing. It's not bruising the dog.
It's a touch. It's just a touch. It's a foam padded touch.
Yeah. I've got the stick in my kitchen. Just because hanging there because it's part of my equipment. But and it's ridiculous. It's amazing. We are promoting the weak dogs in IGP to win. The less brave dogs, the dogs that are like a circus trick in their protection. They're going along in a beautiful heel work position. Don't really care where the helper is. They're looking around to hide. They're looking to hide for a ball because they're more interested in the ball than a helper.
Mm-hmm.
And, you sort of think, and police dogs as well, increasingly. I have a friend that boards police dogs, and he said to me, if you threw a ball, if you saw the dog coming for you, just throw a ball, it's probably going to go another direction. And that isn't funny. These are dogs that are supposed to apprehend criminals. They're not going to take, if the criminal turns around and kicks them or hits them, the dog is frightened. It doesn't want to engage. It's been taught to bite as really an obedience exercise. Because some of these dogs have got some drive, but they're not really that brave. And we're increasingly, because police are worried about litigation if the dog doesn't out immediately, if there's any damage, to the person. We're creating an increasing generations of very soft dogs. And once we lose these hard, very resilient dogs, these brave dogs, it's going to be very, very difficult to go into the genetics and get them back.
Yeah, and we're not going to get narcotics detection dogs. We're not going to get explosive detection dogs because it takes a certain drive level to perform that work.
It does. And again, it's
the little docile mix from the shelter is not going to do it unless he has really high prey drive, right?
Yeah, and wants to work,
And I've worked in detection, right? So I can speak from first-hand experience in the field. I trained my dog from puppy to narcotics dog, and his drive was insane, and that was what made him really, really good and fearless when he had to go under a vehicle or a 10-axle crane or something like that to check out something. You need that confidence and drive level for any type of working ability for a dog. It goes even further, even if we move away from working dogs. I live in the Caribbean. There's a lot of houses that have pools. So you have to teach your dog how to get out of a pool. But you may have a dog that doesn't want to go into water in the first place. But you have to teach him because there comes a point of time where there's a possibility that he's playing with another dog and falls in.
Yeah.
And then how does he get out? If you don't teach him, he will drown. So you must teach your dog how to get out, even if it's causing a little stress getting him into the pool so that he can swim around your body and back to the stairs so he understands that there are stairs that help him get out. We can't see them. Dogs don't see well through the water surface the way we do. And so he has to feel it. And he has to do it so many times that he can pick a landmark where he knows if I'm aiming at that, at some point I feel land under my feet and I can come out.
Yeah.
And so you have to put the dog past his threshold and you have to put the dog past his comfort zone to get in there to teach the dog that.
Yeah.
It's not force-free.
No,
it's not that we just throw the dog in and okay, find your way out. No, you have to You have the dog on a leash, and it's a mix between coaxing the dog and, hoping that the trust in you will make him follow you, and a slight pull that prevents him from going backwards. So I'm not pulling them forward into the pool, but I'm preventing them from going backwards. So they have to make a choice. I can't retreat. Do I trust him enough to follow him in this thing? And eventually they do. And then they get nothing but praise while they're in it. And then I teach them how to get back out. And then we do it again. And with every attempt, they come in faster and faster. Because they trust the process more and more. And they may never go in the pool again after that. But if they fall in, they know how to get out.
Yeah.
And I've had customers send me video of this where, look, he fell in and he got out. He went straight for the stairs.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it then becomes very rewarding to see that.
It is, and I think people, dogs are emotional creatures. I think what people forget is, ourselves as humans, we like a challenge. We like to achieve something, and dogs like, a certain, especially working breeds, they like to work. They like a level of achievement. When a dog has a challenge, it builds resilience, it builds trust in the handler, it builds courage, it builds the character of the dog. And, of course, your small toy dog may just want to lie in the sofa all day, and that's fine. That's what it's been bred for. But, without our working dogs, I'd say, search and rescue dogs, drug dogs, and even, artificial noses don't come close to what a dog's nose is yet. You would think before was what we can do. We can put humans in space to the moon. We can do all this, heart surgery, clone people, but yet we can't create an artificial nose as good as a dog's. A dog's nose is still better for detecting drugs and explosives and everything else. So if we get rid of these really good high drive working dogs, we're doing ourselves as humans a disservice, because the world isn't kind, and it's not going to get kinder, and there's not going to be less wars anytime soon. So there's still very much a need for our dogs.
And we still have terrorism, and we still have explosives floating around out there, and so we still need dogs to find it, so that they keep people safe.
Yeah.
When they were banning the tools in Germany, the police was saying, so hold on a minute, so we have these high drive, confident police dogs. How do you want us to control them now?
Yeah.
They're trained for crowd control, for large scale demonstrations. And how do you want us to keep them under control when they're not supposed to be active? If we can't use a pinch collar, for instance. Yeah. And then, because it's politicians that caused all of this, then they say, yeah, okay, well, when you deploy the dogs, you can use the pinch collar, but you can't train with it.
Yeah.
How much sense does that make? You can't train with it, but you can use it when you deploy the dog. How are the dog supposed to understand that this is what it does, this is what it is, and this is why it's being used? If you can't condition the dog to it and train the dog with it. It makes zero sense.
No, it's not fear on the dog. Not fear on the dog at all. And this is what annoys me. It's politicians that are bending to the will of a very small amount of extremists. Because as you say, there are some fantastic force-free trainers out there. And I learn there's a couple of force-free trainers I train with, and I learn a huge amount from them. And it's very useful for some dogs, and it's not useful for others. There's certain behaviours you can teach if you want to teach it in a force-free way. It takes a lot longer, but you can get there if that's what the client really wants. And there's some things that you'll never teach with a certain dog a force-free way. It's just reality. As you say, if there's competing distractors around, you've got a high-drive dog, maybe you can take 5 years to teach it, because it's old and stiff by the time it decides it's not going to go after a squirrel. But or
it's a situation that means life and death for the dog. I have a client, and she has all her dogs are rescues, and she lives on a large estate, and you have tractors driving around, you have bobcats driving around, ATVs driving around, right, with workers and all that, and she had a blind mastiff. So that dog was constantly hiding by the emergency generator.
Well,
Somehow she had mapped out the path to that generator
yeah,
and was hiding there. So she called me and she says, can you help this dog? And I said, yeah, sure. So I put the dog on a leash and I started at the kennels where her pillow is. And her kennels are always open. They're just more for shelter than anything.
yeah,
And I started there and I walked the exact same path to down the driveway, down to the lawn, the other part of the lawn, to the house. Specific areas where you would want the dog to be in. And that is great. So she could map it out in her brain as to where to go. And I even made her plant different flowers in different areas in her landscaping attempts. So the dog also has scent as a guide.
yeah,
Yeah. And we live in the tropics, so they flower year round.
yeah.
And so that was great. But how do you give the dog an emergency brake if the dog is stepping into the path of a reversing bobcat
Yeah,
where the driver can't see the dog? It's impossible. Right? So if somebody shouts stop, the dog must freeze right there.
stop.
Right. And how do you teach that? Not
Yeah,
with
exactly.
food.
And you can't
Not
without,
with food. It's a
No.
default correction. It's a leash pop. Stop, pop. And then when she remains a few seconds in that position, then the food comes.
Yes.
And she was doing great. So when every time one of the workers or anybody shouted stop, she would just freeze. Right there.
Yeah.
And then they could walk up to her, take her by the collar and guide her away.
Yeah. And what a wonderful gift to give to a dog, to give a dog the freedom to live without fear and to be able to live a normal life. And as you say, with a blind dog, the same with deaf dogs. Deaf dogs are often just kept on lead. They don't have much of a life. And again, it's a great gift to be able to use an e-collar so that you can use that sensation to say, look to your handler, come back. So again, that dog can then go off lead and enjoy freedom. And then you've got predation. If you've got rattlesnakes or you live in a country where there's things like snakes, you want to teach the dog that this is a really bad idea. You never ever go up and try and grab hold of a snake, for example. And you're not going to do that with a couple of pieces of cheese. But you can teach, teach avoidance of things like rattlesnakes with an e-collar.
Yeah. Out here in the tropics, we have an invasive species that was introduced that is not native to here, which is the cane toad.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which is poisonous. They brought it in from Australia.
Yeah.
And in a failed experiment. And it's killing dogs every year.
Yeah.
So how do you teach a dog not to go after it? Because even the dogs that bit it and survived, there is no recollection of the incident because it's a neurotoxin these toads have.
Yeah.
So there is no memory of it. So they can't learn from it. And there's no side effects. It's all done in the brain.
Yeah.
And so there is nothing for the dog to go on to learn that when I see this animal, it's dangerous for me. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And so even with a rattlesnake, if it bites and misses, the dog understands that this thing wants to come after me. There is something. But a frog that's just hopping along, they have no sense of danger there. It just triggers the prey drive and they want to catch it, and then it's lights out. And so how do you teach a dog not to go near frogs?
You can't obviously with an e-collar.
Not with food.
Not with food, no. And also protected species as well. Like, in Australia, they do quite a lot of work, avoidance of protected species too, as well as dangerous species. And, it just means that a dog can have freedom instead of being, kept on lead, kept on a long line permanently with the owner hyper vigilant and unhappy on walks because they're scared the dog's going to eat something. Not everyone wants to live that sort of life with their dog. And I certainly don't like living a sort of hyper vigilant life where I'm terrified something bad's going to happen. I want to enjoy my dogs. I love my dogs. They're my sports dogs and one's my assistant's dog. But I also enjoy life with them as normal dogs. And I wouldn't be able to do that with such high drive dogs without using tools. And again, with disabled people, it's very unfair to say, well, you need a dog that's got some drive to work. If you're doing medical alert or whatever, you're very weak. You've maybe got very little use of your hands. But, we want you to be physically strong enough to be able to cope with the dog on a flat collar or something. And, because I know quite a few disabled people that have a pinch because they can use such a light touch on the dog.
Correct.
And to say to people like that, or an e-collar, to say to people like that, well, you're going to lose your dog now, you're going to lose your independence, your way of leaving home, because your dog is no longer suitable to work without tools. I think governments are forgetting people like that. And what is about society must look at the most weakest people in society and try and help them instead of just being an afterthought they don't really care about. So what if a couple of thousand people are going to be homebound now? Well, I care. I care about them, and I care about dogs. I care about all dogs, and I just don't think it's fair that we are pretending that nature doesn't exist, that we live in some sort of utopia where there is no such thing.
Yes, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with
reality.
That. It is a denial of reality that is behind all of this.
Yeah.
It's almost like people live in a virtual world that is not the real world, and and you can see it in some of the comments. I'm dealing with aggressive dogs all the time. Yet, if I go on the profile, there is not one video of you working a dog. Not one.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's also a difference between a dog that has a little fear aggression or a dog that has some barrier aggression versus a dog that has dominant aggression.
Yeah.
That is day and night to deal with.
Very much so. And
If you have a dominant aggressive dog and you come at him with too much force, you're in just as much trouble as if you come with no force.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
there is some force required, because there are some dogs that if you come with too much, they meet you every step of the way.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, they do this.
Yeah.
And then there's dogs if you come with nothing. Oh, okay, you're a pushover.
Yeah,
nice.
pushover. Yeah.
And then they do what they want. So you have to figure out how far can I go for the dog to understand that the behavior is not acceptable. And you just use enough to get that point across. You don't go past threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also people think balanced trainer just come in, with corrections, and that's not true. The first thing I want to build with a dog is engagement and trust in me, because once a dog is really engaged with me, or once a dog trusts you, you can actually, even with quite dominant dogs, if they trust you, you can use a correction and it's fine. They'll accept it because the trust is there, and they've started seeing that when they live in this black and white way, life becomes a whole lot more enjoyable. But it always starts with engagement and, making friends with the dog and getting some trust together.
I was called to a 2-year-old male Rottweiler that started to become aggressive with the owners. So every time he had something and they wanted to take it, or he was going for something that they wanted to take it and they tried to beat him to it, he would growl at them and snap, and so they had him in the kennel, and I got there, and the dog, I mean, for lack of better words, the dog tried to eat me.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know me at all, and he was super aggressive. And I just stood by the kennel door with food.
Yeah.
And every time he calmed down and he sat, when he was trying to recover his breath, I tossed him some food. I said, good boy, good sit. And so I got him conditioned to the word sit in that position. And then after a while, I could raise the food and tell him sit, and he would sit. And then I did the same with the down, and the first 2 sessions, I was just teaching him those 2 positions. And in the third one, he has realized that this guy, every time this guy comes, he's working with me. And I'm a working dog, and I like to work.
Yeah.
And so the 4th time I came, he was wagging his tail and was a completely different body language, and I could put him on the leash and take him out of the kennel. Of course, when I wanted him to walk with me and he didn't want to walk and I gave him a tug, he wanted to growl. So he got a firmer dog and I said, hey. He stopped, he walked with me, and then he got food again. And he realized, oh, hang on a second. So if I just listen to this guy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and he was fine. And then I did the same thing with his owners and had them handle the dog in the same way. And they're fine now. You know, he's 3.5 years old, no incident, and he's living life. They have him out, they throw a ball for him and throw a frisbee, and he's happy to bring it back. And you know, because I did some engagement with him, I played engagement games, I played tug of war with him, I played frisbee with him, I toss a ball with him, and he loves those things. He's a working line Rottweiler, so he loves this, especially the tug of war, you know.
Yeah,
So it's
they all love tug of war.
Yeah, so the husband plays the tug of war, you know. Sometimes even the kids, and he will pull them and they might fall down, but then when they let go, he just walks off with the toy.
Yeah.
You know, and they're giggling and they're having fun. Because for them, it's like you versus me. Let me see if I can hold on to it. You know, so it's a game for the kids and for him. He doesn't see it as anything other than that. You know, because he got the right guidance.
Yeah.
But can you imagine a dog like this being handled by somebody who is not believing in any form of corrections? That dog would be euthanized.
They wouldn't even handle the dog. I mean, I've had a couple of dogs with, you know, confident dogs that they weren't fear aggressive. We were, quite dominant dogs. And the trainers that had come before, no one, even though they were bringing lots of food, none of them could touch the dog because they were scared. And again, it's about patience. I'd come along, well, give you some food and you'll give you some simple commands. I give you some more food and we start to get a little bit of trust. And then, actually the dog is very happy to see you, wants to do things with you. Whereas, I think, because we're, used to big dogs, we're not frightened. Whereas a lot of force-free trainers will come and even though there's a barrier, say the dog's on the other side of a fence or something, and they're frightened and they step back. And of course, for a dominant dog, that's fantastic. You're pushing them back and it's wonderful. And then they'll throw some food and, and they'll throw some food and it's like, what are you doing? And then when you do, someone that does know what they're doing comes in and, you stand your ground and, okay, fine, just wait till they stop and start making friends. And the relationship actually comes quite quickly because the dog wants to work. The dog wants to have a relationship with someone that they can work with and have fun with because they're not really having fun it's not a secure, happy place for a dog trying to boss everyone around. And sometimes been punished and sometimes not and not getting attention. And life becomes far, far better for the dog when they behave. They get lots of reward. They understand what the boundaries are. And then they're starting to, especially if you can then introduce some enrichment that's really fulfilling their genetic potential. So maybe start doing obedience and scent work. And, and as you say, just even tug with a toy. It's just the dog is suddenly, for the first time in his life, is really enjoying life. And he's engaging with you. And it's funny because the owners will say, you've only done 1 or 2 sessions, my dog prefers you to me. And it's like, well, you need to learn how to play with him. And this is what I'm here for, to teach you how to engage your dog, how to play with him, but also to set boundaries for him and correct him. Once the dog and the owner start to build that trust with each other, because they often don't have any trust or real relationship, when they start to build that, then often there's no stopping them. Very quickly, they're off, and then a couple of months later, you'll hear they're going to a dog show and they've done an obedience class and they've got first place, and that's really, really nice. And then they're looking maybe for an IGP trainer, and it's lovely to take a dog that when they went through a couple of force-free trainers, they said, oh, we can't do anything with it, and it's actually quite a simple solution. It's a good dog, and then suddenly the dog is having a fantastic life as his owner. But as you say, if the wrong trainer comes and is frightened and does nothing, or your dog can't be fixed, then off to the vet they go to be put to sleep sometimes. And it's sad. And I would have more respect for extreme trainers if they recognised they were out of their depth and said, okay, well, I can't fix this, but try a balanced trainer, or I know somebody that's, a good ethical trainer that, is a good balanced trainer. and refer on instead of saying, well, it's my way or the highway, force-free doesn't work for this dog, so it has to die. That's what one of my really, really big objections with it. And it's extremists. It's not the good force-free trainers out there. It's the extremists. Because, the good force-free trainers will be honest and say, well, it either takes a long time or I can't do it. And it's your ethical decision if you want to go down a balanced route. And I respect trainers like that. I have no respect for extremists that kill dogs because they have an agenda they want to push on other people, including us.
Yeah, and oftentimes the agenda is bigger than the skill level.
Yes, far bigger.
Right? And I always tell people, when you have a puppy and it grows up in your home, a puppy is pushing. It's pushing to this side and it's pushing to this side. And it's expecting the pushback.
Yeah.
That is how dogs figure out where their boundaries are, what they can do, what they cannot do. They want to find out.
Yeah.
They're actively trying, so they push you and they push you. And if you don't push back, they keep pushing and they keep pushing. And then we're in the problem behavior area. And then at some point, it's so confusing to them. I said, I'm not getting any feedback. I don't know. And then they get insecure because they don't know. They can't relax because they need to find out where the boundary is. Yeah. And it shows itself sometimes when people complain to me and say, when you come once a week, the greeting you get from my dog, I can't get that when I come from work.
Yeah.
Why is that? And I said, because for 1 hour, your dog knows exactly where the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And it can relax and it can move freely within those boundaries. And for the first time, the dog gets to, whew.
Yeah.
Right? Because
I can
dogs need somebody to be in charge.
Yeah.
I would say above 90% of dogs are quite happy to follow. There's a small minority of dogs that wants to be the leader, that are the dominant ones. Most dogs are quite happily to follow somebody, But you also have to show them that you're leading.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, and if you just let them be, then you get problems. It's just with puppies, too much freedom too soon.
Yeah.
If I have a puppy and I can't supervise the dog is in a playpen or a crate. Yeah.
No.
So people say, you don't get all that destruction around the house and
No.
It's the occasional plant pot when he's upset with something. But outside of that, they don't take apart my car. They don't make 8 garden hoses out of one. I don't get that because they don't get the opportunity to do those things.
Yes.
And then they grow out of that phase, and then they're fine. And then they have to, when that year's up, now they have to earn their freedom more and more. So Force is in the bedroom right now, on his pillow. He gets half an hour unsupervised. Let me see what he will do. And I come back in, nothing is out of place. Good. So I know I can trust him for half an hour.
Yes.
Then we try an hour, and then we try an hour and a half, and 2 hours, and 4 hours. And then, okay, he has earned the trust that I can leave him in there for a few hours, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right? He lies down on the bed watching TV, and that's that. And so I do this with all my dogs.
Yes.
So I don't have those issues.
Yeah.
And you open a crate, you don't say anything. You just open a crate. And the dog closest to the crate walks in.
Yeah.
It is so normal for them to go into a crate that you can transport them, you can take them to the vet. We have dry season and wet season. And in dry season, oftentimes you get a lot of fires. So I have to move a crate from one room to the next so that the smoke doesn't get there. And stuff like that. And then they have to be in a crate for a little longer period. And they're fine. They lie down and sleep.
Yeah.
It means nothing to them.
I think
they're not
training a
distressed.
dog.
They're not depressed because they're in a crate.
Yeah. It's their dog cave, isn't it? It's their man cave, and
Yes.
as a dog. But the thing is, I think it's becoming a lost skill, training a dog to be good in the home. I mean, even some of the sports dog trainers I train with, but they look disbelievingly that I have 2 very high drive dogs that live in my house. I don't need to crate them when I go out. I could if I wanted to crate train, obviously, but they have access to the full house. They don't raid bins. They don't steal the cat food. They don't chase the cats. Because, early on they learn, there are boundaries. And people just don't seem to believe me. Like, how can you leave a dog in the house that doesn't raid the bin? Well, because when they were young, there were consequences for raiding the bin. It's not something that even enters their head now.
Yes.
It's not part of their options in life. So, I can leave them for a couple of hours and everything is just as is when I come home. And, they're content. They just go to sleep. They're not got any anxiety about me going out. Or I can put them in the crate if I want to. If I had any reason to, because I agree with you, it's very important to have them crate trained. So if we do need to go to the vet, if they need to be transported, it's a comfortable place for them.
It's
But
also
I think it's a dying art, being able to teach a dog to be really good in the house and very reliable. Like I see so many people that have really insane problems in the house, which if they'd set boundaries for their puppies, would just never have occurred.
correct. And it's so many different things, like separation anxiety. If your dog has the structure of crate training in the first year, you don't get separation anxiety. The dog is okay to be alone at times.
Yeah.
Right? So if Forrest is on his pillow in the bedroom and I leave the room, he doesn't know if I'm going to work to do a training session somewhere or I'm going to the fridge to get a yogurt.
Yeah.
He has no idea because I don't say bye. I don't say hi and make a big fuss when I come back. Oftentimes when I come home on the evening, I was just an hour in traffic trying to get home. And, 54 years old, the bladder is full.
Yeah.
When I open the door to walk in there, the first thing he hears is move because I have to go to the washroom.
This is too familiar for me.
Right? And so when after he's calm again, when I'm back, and then I sit down on the bed and say, come. And then I greet him when he's in a calm frame of mind. So I don't feed that frenzied behavior. You know? And a lot of people do that. Okay, bye-bye now, behave yourself, and this, that, and the other. And then when they come, the dog can't wait for them to come back. And when they come back, the dog goes all crazy. And of course, they touch the dog and pet the dog, rewarding that type of behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there and like, no. No. You're creating your own problems.
Yes.
And once you explain it to people, then it's almost like this aha moment, because when they think about it, it makes perfect sense. They just never got the chance to hear that. Right? And I'll tell all my clients, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear.
Yes.
And I'm German by birth, so I don't come with a filter.
Yes.
So right? That is the first thing that clients hear from me. And then a couple of sessions in, they understand why.
Yeah.
Because I pack it in a little humor. But
I try to.
Yeah, I always try that, and get them analogies from their work. So if somebody works in the office, I say, okay, so you have a high drive working dog, but you want the dog to be calm in the house. Do you know what you're asking? No. Okay, do you drink coffee? Yes. Okay, drink a can of espresso and sit down on a chair and don't move.
Yes.
I can't do that. I said, yeah, but that's how your dog feels.
Or.
And then it clicks that maybe they need to exercise the dog more.
Yeah.
And then they do, and they play tug of war and fetch and all that, and then I get a phone call, hey, Mark, look at this. And then it point the camera at the dog on the couch next to them, stretched out, snoring away.
Yeah.
I said, there you go.
Or.
It's oftentimes people don't know. And it happens, the problem behaviors come from a point of ignorance in many instances. Even though I always say 5 minutes of Google could have told you that.
Well, I don't know.
But people put a lot of research into anything that they buy, but not so much into what they need to do with their dog. And then oftentimes, nowadays, the advice that they're then seeing is don't say no.
We have a big problem with Google, unfortunately. Google is telling people, Google is pushing a very, very extreme force-free agenda. And, I had a friend, not even a client, a very good friend of mine that had a puppy. They have, I don't want to be too personal, but they wouldn't let me come up and help them. They wouldn't let another trainer come up to help them. So they were basically getting all their dog training advice on Google. And after a couple of months, they were living upstairs in the house with the puppy. The cats were living downstairs. They couldn't have the two meeting. And then eventually the puppy was jumping on the table and eating their dinner. And Google said they weren't even allowed to remove the plates. They just had to let whatever they were being told, they just had to let the dog eat it and make the right decision not to eat their dinner. And they put the dog to the pound. And
Wow.
they got another puppy 2 weeks later, and exactly the same thing will happen. But Google is telling them that they mustn't say no, that it's going to emotionally devastate their dog if they say no, or even just remove something from it that it shouldn't have.
But
And I
how?
just couldn't.
I'm trying to figure out where as a society or as humans, where we went wrong.
What?
That all common sense flies out the window, and people see this and believe that this is a good idea. I don't, even if you're not a dog trainer, just on principle alone. When did this happen that you can get advice like this and it makes sense to you? Is it that when they have children and they're cooking something and they see the child walking towards the stove, they just sit back on the couch and see what happens?
Well,
Because you can't say no. Say don't go there, it's hot.
yep.
So they must wait until the child puts the hand on it and burns itself to understand it's hot.
Well, I think
I mean,
with
it's
parenting-
how it's the same people. Oh, putting a dog in a crate is cruel. Well, hang on a second. Was your child in a crib? Yes. And when it outgrew the crib, it was in a playpen? Yes. How is that different? When you couldn't supervise your child, it was in a playpen. How is that different from putting a dog in a playpen or in a crate? It's
yeah,
not.
to be honest,
Right?
my
It
friends
is
are
just
young.
this.
They're not even doing that. Their children aren't left for a second, and they have very, very strange parenting ideas that bewilder me totally. And I don't know whether I just really, really don't understand where these ideas are coming from. But, I guess that's their generation of having children. They're going to have to work it out themselves. And our parents do the best they feel they can. But where these crazy ideas are coming from, I don't know. I've got friends that they have children and they don't leave them alone for a second, and that's just not good for a child. I don't know what age they're going to start leaving them alone. You don't want them to go to school. They want them to mix with other children in case they get hurt, or their confidence is damaged by being told they've done something wrong. They get a song wrong or something. It's just. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
just getting old.
it's weird. I saw
It's
a video of it just showed the playgrounds when I was a kid
Yeah.
and what they looked like, you know. And I remember all of them said, yeah, this cubicle thing, when you slip and you fall, you hit everything on the way down. And you're
And
all
then it's
buttered and
concrete at
bruised.
the bottom.
And this spinning thing that we would,
Yeah.
instead of standing on the inside, we would stand on the outside, and was a dare as to who can hold on the longest and all this thing without getting sick or flying
Yeah.
off, you know,
Yeah.
and being thrown into another universe when you
Yeah.
let go.
Yeah.
Or the 2-story tall slides that were
Yeah.
made out of metal that in
Hot
summer
metal. Yeah.
that in summer were piping hot,
Yeah.
you know, and we survived.
Yeah.
We survived, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays everything is so bubble wrapped, and children are no longer taught how to resolve conflict and
No.
how to deal with conflict, and it shows, because those are now the same children being teenagers and young adults that are in that force-free camp,
Yeah.
because that is what they know, that's what they grew up with. Everybody gets a trophy, everything is nice, and life is not like this, and never has been like this, and never will be like
Never
that.
will be like this. No. It's
it's a bit like Demolition Man, right? In their world,
yeah.
where you get a ticket for if you say a bad word and
Yeah.
everything, and you have to use the 3 seashells, and everybody walks around in a robe and be merry and be happy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the world is not like that,
No,
right?
it's not.
So it's not gonna change because some people pretend it is like that, and that is where it evades any logic for me. It is one thing that this is what you like, okay, but the world is not like this, and the world is not gonna change because you want it to.
Yeah.
The
And they're
reality is not
extremely
just going
aggressive.
away, neither can you explain it away.
Yeah. And they're extremely aggressive in trying to ram their ideas down our throats. It's
Yeah.
So while they're preaching peace and love, they're actually being extremely manipulative and aggressive about it, and very
Yeah.
rude.
And it's always science says, right? But science also said that smoking is not dangerous at some point.
Yes, science. It's determined by how much you pay the
And
scientist.
and we know how wrong that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And so science will at some point say that what they're saying now was utter rubbish, right? And it will happen. It will happen.
It does. It already has.
Yeah.
You just need to choose. Sorry, my computer's overheating slightly. You just need to choose your scientist. And even some of the force-free papers, as I said, where they went out to prove purely positive was best, they ended up saying, well, some dogs you can't train like this. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
then they come to the agenda, well, we must get rid of those dogs.
And that is what I admire about trainers like Susan Garrett, who said she chose 30 years ago not to train with corrections, and everything takes way longer, and
Yeah.
she admits that, and her sport doesn't require much corrections because it's all about forward movement,
Yeah.
and she's a multiple world champion in agility. But she also admits she came across a dog that she could never let off the leash because the
Yes.
moment she opens the door, the dog would chase after something, and she had no way of fixing that. And she
Yeah.
ended up giving the dog to another trainer who's a balance trainer, and where the dog was living happily ever after because the dog was allowed to be off leash and run around because it would no longer chase after something. She was
Yes.
just not prepared to do it.
To do it, yeah.
And that I can respect. If you
Yeah.
say, okay, I don't want to use this and I will work around wherever I can, and there will be times where I can't do it, so I will get somebody else to do it or give the dog to somebody who will give the dog the freedom that it deserves.
Yes.
That I can absolutely respect. What I can't
Yes,
respect
definitely.
is you must do what I do or you're a bad person,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And
Or if
unlike
I
that
work
person,
with
I have volunteered more time in shelters than they will in a lifetime
Yeah.
trying to help dogs. So far, every dog that I featured on my social media and that I worked with has been adopted.
Yeah.
We have 100% track record thus far. And
So
so,
the problem, yeah. In the UK,
you know,
unfortunately, unless you're a force-free trainer, they won't let you volunteer in shelters. And, it's ridiculous. I've known trainers that have went into shelters, in the past and made a massive difference. You totally turned around the adoption rate, and then someone else has come in to work there and management said, no, only force-free. And so the rate of adoption plummets, and the dog, they're just full constantly with dogs they can never rehome, that are going to either be in a cage for the rest of their life or be destroyed to make way for some other dogs that will be in a cage for the rest of their life.
it
But are
happens in
smaller and cuter.
it happens in the States too, because
Yeah.
I hear people like Robert Cabral and Larry Crone and those guys talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And Robert is somebody who spent an insane amount of times helping shelters.
Yes. Yes.
And to me, I can't fathom it. You get somebody who's volunteering their time, who's not charging you a cent to help you, to make dogs more adoptable, but you rather kill them than let that happen.
Yeah.
Where is the sense in it? How is that force free? How is that humane? How is that, it doesn't fit any of those criteria at all.
It doesn't, but it brings in money, unfortunately. Or at least they believe it brings in the most money from donations by saying, "Oh, we will never." But they could market the same way for balance training. But they don't, and all the charities, the assistance dog charities, are now sort of force free. If you're not force free, you can't join the sort of organisations. You can't fly out of the country. You're stuck in the UK unless you take a ferry or something out. But
Wow.
it's crazy, and all the big charities are force free. And
So
if you
how
said you were going to use balance training, they wouldn't let you have a dog. Or
so
they
so how
they might look at me and say, "No, we never adopt a dog to someone like you. Do
s-
sports and
so soon we will no longer have guide dogs for the blind.
Yeah, well, no. What we'll have is very badly behaved guide dogs for the blind, which is what we have now. I saw a guide dog one day walking around the store with a leg of meat in its mouth.
Wow.
Because yeah, and I've had stories of people with guide dogs that have decided they don't want to go home; they want to go to the park. So that not everyone that's blind is fully blind. So we're partially blind, but others aren't. So the
Hmm.
dog has just refused to go home, and it's just led them to the park and just said, "No, I'm not going home. You can't make me." And the person can't get home.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. It's some
But
we
I'm
used to have the best trained assistance dog, guide dogs, etc. Now they're some of the worst trained, in my opinion, because they are either have a dog with enough drive but needs corrections, or they have such a low drive dog it doesn't want to do any work and it just wants to sleep on the sofa and
and I,
is
and I'm and I'm and I'm picturing a blind person with a guide dog standing at a pedestrian traffic light, trying to cross an avenue, and in the median where they have trees, there's a squirrel,
oh
and the
yeah,
and the dog just darts across to go after the squirrel, and
yeah,
and runs with its human into traffic.
yes.
It's how is that making sense to people?
It's not. It's not, and that's why they're starting to try and put halties and head collars on these very very young puppies, a couple of weeks old, thinking that's going to solve it. It's not going to solve it.
No, they're just
It's
gonna
not going to solve
resist it
it.
more and more, and resent it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, these dogs. I mean, a lot of dogs. People keep asking me when my dog's going to retire. She's coming up for 7, but she absolutely loves her job. She's not. You know, people think because she has boundaries, she's not going to like her job. But no, she understands what the job is, and what she can do and what she can't, and she really enjoys it. Whereas a lot of assistance dogs get very resentful and unhappy. Um, I think they're, it's just very sad. They don't enjoy the job, retired early. And I can't see my dog really retiring until she's sort of arthritic, because she's a very gregarious dog. She enjoys her job. So, I'm very much of opinion. Once she's finished work, once I'm out of the shop, if people want to come up and ask me to pat her, I'm happy for her to have a little bit of time for herself, to have some attention, and it keeps her very very happy with the job. And
Right.
that's something that's very no in the assistance dog community. But for me as well, I mean, I like talking to people, so it suits me in the dog. If I didn't like talking to people, I'd have maybe a dog like Mina who's very aloof, and then
Right.
you know, but people just don't often take the dog's personality into consideration when working their dog. And for me, it's a partnership. So although there are certain things that are only for me to say that the dog must do, there's also needs to be some give and take in terms of the dog's personality. If it really does like people, then I'm okay to give her 5 minutes. If somebody says, "Can I give her a pat?" If she's not working, that's fine. And there's certain decisions my dog has to make. Scent work, and that's a dog's decision. The dog, I can't tell the dog when it smells something, so I have to put all my trust into my dog for medical alert. So
Correct.
that's her responsibility. So I have my responsibilities, which are keeping her safe, making sure she's in a very good sort of never feels worried about the environment. Other dogs aren't allowed to interrupt or annoy or whatever. So she's very safe, and she's very comfortable with what her tasks are, what her role is, and my leadership. But there's times she's my leader. So when I need a medical alert, she's making the decision. She's saying to me, "Look, you're not well. You need to sit down." And that's very, 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 very important. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand. They think, "Oh, she's my dog. She's going to do what I tell her." No, she's my leader. So when I need a medical alert, she's making the decision. She's saying to me, "Look, you're not well. You need to sit down." And that's very, very it's a relationship we have together that's very special, I think. And, with you ever work in dog search and rescue, you put so much trust in your dog, in their senses. If you're looking for bombs, you don't want a dog that's going to miss,
Correct. But even with my shepherd Ninja, right, narcotics dog, I could work him in a busy car park with people walking around, and he's searching cars. He's circling cars,
Yeah.
and checking. And I can just whistle and point at another car, and he will leave this one and go to that one, just like how you can direct a sheepdog.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And he was fully protection trained.
Yeah.
So there's one person that forgot that the dogs are in the car park and he's on his phone, and Ninja now is turning the corner of a car into the pathway where he was walking, and he gets startled and he's throwing his phone up in the air, going, "Wah!" and catches his phone. And of course, it's a behavior that has the dog pause. So Ninja looked at him and then turned around and looked at me, and it's like, you want me to scrap him? I said, no.
Yeah.
Such.
No.
Search. And he goes, okay. Puts the nose back on the bumper and continued around the car. And this guy said, did this dog not bite me? How is this possible?
Right.
And he was somebody from management. And then Safety Week came up, and then we demonstrated it. People were posing with pictures with the dog and all that. And then, afterwards do a protection demo. And people went, I just hugged this dog.
Yeah.
And it drove home the point that you can switch them on and you can switch them off if they're well trained.
Exactly.
I trained a safe handling course for the veterinary school here.
Okay.
And I did the same thing. I took him with me, and I put him under the whiteboard in the lecture hall, where he was for an hour and a half not moving while I was lecturing. And then, we take a break and we have a little obedience demo outside. And I did that. What they didn't know is that I also had a decoy on standby.
Yeah.
So I let them pose with the pictures, and I hand them the leash. Can you walk him down the corridor? And they did all of that, and then afterwards did a protection demo with him. And people were like,
Yeah.
I just touched the dog, and they're going in their phone, and I just.
Yeah.
And then afterwards brought him back in the lecture hall, put him in a Platz under the whiteboard, and it is the second half of the lecture for an hour and a half where he was sleeping.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is he not moving? I said, because he's trained.
Yeah.
The last thing he heard was Platz. That means he's staying there until he hears something else.
So, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
Maisie, my assistant's dog, she's my working medical alert dog, but she's had some protection training, and the only time I've ever had any concern was when I was in an X-ray department, and I came out and there's all these people with their arms in plaster like a slave, and she looked at it and I said, not here, not the time and place, and she just like, oh, okay then. But
I wouldn't do the same with Force.
No. But she's
right?
so
I wouldn't
balanced.
have put Force in that same position that I'd put
No.
Ninja in, because
No.
he was a different temperament.
Exactly, yeah.
Ninja was super confident, but he was not a dominant dog.
Yeah.
He was very confident. He was not scared of anything. He would climb around in the suspension of a 10-axle crane. He would go in a tool container where all the tools scattered on the ground, and he would climb through this to check for narcotics in the dark. He would do all of those things.
Yeah.
But because he wouldn't wait until I come with a torchlight. He started once he was inside, But he was social otherwise.
Yes.
Right? And Force, while I can have him among people in a down and he's fine, until somebody wants to pet him.
Exactly.
And that is where he says,
No, my space. Yeah.
There's only a handful of people that get to touch me. You're not one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. The dog needs to be suited for a job.
And that is the dominance in him, right? That is where he's like, nope, not happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I love him for it.
Yeah.
Because I live in a country that has relatively high crime, right? And he makes me feel a lot safer.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And he's mentally completely stable, but he's not backing down from anything.
No, exactly.
And I love that about him.
Yeah.
And at home he's just like a little teddy bear. He's with us. He's like really a super sweet dog. But then
That's what I love about the Rottweiler. They
Yes.
are, for me, although, I love shepherds and other breeds, for me, the Rottweiler just has that sociability and loving nature inside the house with his own people.
Yeah.
Like mine are always beside me, always want to be touching me. And no separation anxiety, I can leave them. But their preference when I'm in the house is to be very close to me. Um, and I'm a typical little old lady with two cats and two dogs. But instead of two Yorkshire Terriers, they're two Rottweilers, and they're trained in protection. But
Yeah.
I like having I like having the affection from my dogs. They're so loving, and I think you saw the video of my Rottweiler, my IGP dog. She likes to sleep in my arms. She goes to sleep cuddled and she snores. And like you were saying with your dog, people wouldn't believe if they saw her out in the field, actually doing
Yeah.
protection work. They wouldn't think it's not the same dog. This thing's a monster, whereas this thing's a love bug. The
Yeah.
same dog, and I
Same
think
with
that's
him. Same with him at home, right?
yeah,
Now his snuggling is conditional, right? He snuggles for as long as you pet him, and when you stop, he turns around, and you're looking at his back
yeah,
because he turns in protest that
yeah,
you stop petting him.
yeah,
But yeah. Other than that, he would come from his pillow to the side of the bed every 5 minutes and put his head on the mattress to check in. You
yeah,
know, and I like that. Even when he's out in the yard, he carries around his Kong toy and checks in every now and again.
yeah. Yeah,
You
that's
know,
the same with mine when I walk them. Well, one of them never really goes too far away. The one who does medical alert, which is
yeah,
partly that I think she kind of takes her responsibilities quite seriously, which is why both of them do it. So she gets a rest at night. So she's one dog, my dog I take in public, she does medical alert in public, whereas the other dog does more at home. So she gets
okay,
a bit of a rest. But the other dog, she's a kind of perimeter that she never goes beyond, and she comes back and checks in with me every couple of minutes. And that's really nice. I like going on walks because it's very relaxing when, especially in a forest or something, when they're maybe a little bit outside, but they're going to come back and check in and they're never going to go beyond a sort of certain distance. I
correct.
tend not to go into forests during the day when there's a lot of loose dogs running about. I prefer my forest walks in the evening where it's really quiet. I'm very lucky. I've got a park where there's a very, very long drive into the car park. So if there's no one else in the car park, there's no one else there. And,
Right.
I can just walk and it's cool and it's nice and I can smell the honeysuckle and hear the owls. And that's nicer than in the day when there's hundreds of kids screaming and hundreds of little yappy dogs. And, you know, and that's my autism. I like that peace and quiet at night.
Yeah. Which brings me to another topic that I wanted to discuss with you, which is a bit away from training and it goes more into breeding. And that is some of the smaller dogs. Now, I'm training quite a few French bulldogs, and most of them, they live in air conditions, so they're fine.
Yeah.
They get their exercise in the apartment with
Yeah.
tug of war and those kind of things, because
Yeah.
they're little gladiators. They love tug of war.
They do actually. They're quite
But
spunky little dogs.
the breed that I feel very sorry for is pugs.
Yeah.
They're cute, cuddly dogs, but they are bred almost to the point of not being able to live.
Yes.
And that to me is so unethical that, it borders on criminal.
Yeah.
And there was a reporter in the UK a few years back that was interviewing breeders. And it was the pug, then the King Cavalier,
Cavalier King Charles. Yeah.
King Charles Spaniels, and so forth, where the brain grows more than the skull, and
Yeah.
they're in constant
Hypothalamus
pain.
and- Yeah.
And the pugs not being able to breathe and the eyes popping out. And they were asking breeders, why are you breeding dogs like that? And breeders got super defensive
Yeah.
and arrogant and flippant and said, if that is what people want, then that's what people get, and you can't tell me I can't do it. And my thing is, you have a kennel club that is supposed to prevent that. Because everything in their mission statements and so forth talks about the welfare of dogs and welfare this and protect this, but they're not really caring about the welfare at all.
They don't care. I mean, did you see
I know.
Crofts this year? there was a lot of debate about the pug that was the winner of, I think, whatever toy group or whatever. And it had slits for nostrils. Now, everyone was saying, no, it's an ethical breeder because it's passed the BOAS test, which is brachiocephalic obstructive airway syndrome. Now, if you look into, so Cambridge University has this BOAS test, the dog had passed it. Now, you would think a veterinary test to look at whether a dog is structurally healthy might actually involve something kind of scientific, possibly, a little bit veterinary side. Basically, what the test involves is taking the dog and walking it around for about a minute. So this is what's termed exercise for these dogs, is gently walking it around for a minute. Then they take a stethoscope and listen to the larynx and listen to the external. Can you hear it making a funny noise? And that's it. That is their test. So they're not looking at the length of the soft palate, they're not looking at how obstructed the nostrils are, nothing. You just let them a little donder around at a walk and see if you're breathing heavily. And that's their view, that's their essentially their test on whether the dog is structurally healthy. And that's just a joke. And like, if you,
terrible.
If you didn't look, like, because before I looked into the test, I thought it would be something like, oh, they'll anaesthetize the dog, they'll look at the length of the soft palate, they'll do all these things that you would really look at if you really structurally wanted to see if that dog was sound. It's nothing like that. And then you just think it's a joke. Okay, so it's passed this test, but in reality, it wouldn't be able to go for a walk, possibly. I don't know. I can't tell for that particular dog. But and then again, when people look, this ethical breeder, and I'll, can sue me if she wants, it's all online. If you look up the Kennel Club record of the dog, I think it was bred at something like 9 months to its half-sister. So it's not really been health tested or, so this is just an example of the Kennel Club merely taking money from breeders that, in my view, aren't behaving ethically. And I'm entitled to think personally that isn't ethical. So, and I don't want to attack one particular breeder or dog, but, after all what happened online, I don't think my viewpoint is suddenly going to be controversial or anything that's not said before and anything that's not officially recorded. So it's just a statement of fact. That
just saw a few years ago in Westminster show. They had a German Shepherd. By the way, meet Klaus. He's my online
hello,
assistant.
Klaus.
Where the hocks from the ankle to the hock was flat on the ground when he was when he was trotting.
I saw that.
And he won. And I'm looking at that as a owner of working line shepherds. I'm looking at that and I'm like, how is this dog gonna run around 400 head of sheep for 12 hours?
Yeah. It is so sad.
It is terrible.
Yeah, and they're wobbly on their hind legs. They're unstable. If you poked them with your finger, they'd probably just tip over and fall. They have no functional, and again, that comes back to the IGP and what's going wrong, because really the IGP world, in terms of the rules, is very much under the sort of German Shepherd sort of people. And things like IGP1 now, they're lowering the A-frame to make the angle very, very gradual, things like that, because the shepherds don't have enough power in their back legs to even jump over an A-frame, scramble up, and putting the 1 meter hurdle, I think they want it down, these proposed changes, down to 60 centimeters because they can't jump a meter. That's the showline dogs that they need to get, I think an IGP1 before they get all their various titles and their sort of titles are complete. So they're changing the sport to accommodate these weak dogs that structurally can't even jump over a little hurdle and can't scramble up an A-frame. The protection work, again, it's, what it's like in Germany. I don't really have to tell you how things can work there in terms of money passing, changing hands, and dogs getting titles and getting titles in a car park I've heard of, and not proper show. And
yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
And then you have organizations that are trying to fix that, like you have the RSV 2000, who have their own the old Schutzhund rules.
Yeah.
So they still have the padded stick. They still have the dog has to pass certain tests. and so they trying to preserve the German Shepherd.
Yes. And they should.
German Shepherd and Malinois, I think, is the two breeds covered under the RSV, and I think it's a good thing that that's being done. I'm not sure how much the growth will be and the popularity will be, but I'm happy that they exist.
Yes.
And that somebody's doing something about this and is preventing the decline of the German Shepherd.
Yeah.
To me as a German, that is what everybody knows us by, right? The German Shepherds. And to an extent Rottweilers. And that's why I'm so happy that my breeder, One Head Vanguard Kennels, Aaron Thomas, is always looking for a working dog that can show.
Yes.
He doesn't want a show dog that could work.
Yeah. Poorly.
Right?
Yeah.
The emphasis is on working. And the same with his mentor in Belgium, Falcon's Nest Kennel.
Yeah.
Right? And I've met the dogs that he brought in. I've worked with some of them. And I just love them. Super confident. Wherever they go, they enter a new training field and they walk up on the field and they own it.
Yeah.
It's no matter what environment you put them in. Same with Force. You take him anywhere and he's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
No,
that's what I love about my bitch as well. She's super confident, I can take her anywhere. She's very social, which is good for IGP, because the vets are all over them now, and if there's any dogs have been disqualified for being a bit spicy with the vet, so even things like that. And we've got to, it's a different sport now, but she's very super confident dog, very, very curious, very predictable, in her behaviour, balanced, but extremely high drive. And she's a working dog. She doesn't look like a show dog. And unfortunately, I didn't tape her ears enough when she was younger. So her ears, as the breeder said, they were very good when she left, but they're not
the same with my female, Force's aunt. Her ears are flying as well.
Yeah.
But and as far as drive is concerned, she's a black and tan Malinois.
Yeah, but mine is a little bit the same. But a good approach in the house, but outside the house, I sort of say, well, when I'm walking, or if you hear a sonic boom, if you hear a bang, it's a sonic boom from her reaching Mach 5 when, when she starts running round, it just has so much energy. And, she gets tracked every day, obedience every day. We go to the club 2-3 times a week, so we're doing obedience and protection. But you can never really give her enough work. She loves to work, and she just, she's all walk. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm dying of flu. You've been out twice. Walk.
Yeah.
But that's what I bought her for. I bought her to be a really top level sports dog, and you need that sort of energy nowadays. It's for really nice obedience and a drive.
Yeah.
So
and to compete, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's up against is the Malinois.
Yeah, and she's good enough to compete against Malinois on an equal basis. It's just whether I'm good enough to train her. We'll see.
It's the same here. As trainers, we're oftentimes busy training everybody else's dog, that the training of our own dogs can suffer at times.
Yeah.
I'm
very lucky.
At least in my case here, this is, and then
the
temperature is a problem. So sometimes when I have the time, it's 32 degrees with 90% humidity. I can't train a dog in that. So it's not always conducive. But yeah, I guess we pretty much covered everything that we set out to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to remind people again, get this book, The Dog Training Dilemma. And we also put it on our Amazon storefront.
Oh,
it's available on Amazon, and we have an Amazon storefront. So we put it there as well, so that when people go to dogpoint.pet, go on the shop now, Amazon storefront, and the book is right there.
Oh, wonderful. And if I could just mention my training business in the UK, it's rottweilertraining.co.uk. So I do train other breeds, but my deep love is the Rottweiler. I think as you get older, you sort of think, but you know what? I just want to train the dogs I really, really like.
Yes,
So,
Yes.
you
And
know,
I think with a certain age, we also earn the right to have the dogs that we want.
yeah, we do.
You know, and yeah, I love Rotties. Always have, even as a kid. I was
Yeah,
always Rotties was always my breed, and because I always admired this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde way of them. You
yeah,
know, the very nice and cuddly with the family, but absolute beasts when it comes to protection.
yeah, definitely.
And a dog that can have both extremes, you know, and is stable on top of that is
It's very,
just
very rare.
what I gravitate to.
Yeah, I mean that's all. I can't ask for more. That's what I feel I've got in this, in both of my dogs, but especially this bitch. She's very special, this young bitch, and I keep thinking to her, one day we're going to be IFR world champions, but that's our aim. Maybe I should aim a little bit lower, but I think you've got to aim to the top, and the bitch can do it. Whether I can train her well enough is another thing. So, we'll see.
Right. Yeah, you should never aim too low. You
No,
always aim high and then go as far as you can.
yeah,
You
and I
know,
mean I'll be happy whatever happens.
because I find if we aim low, then we stop short.
Yes, and
You know.
this bitch tries her heart out for me, and that's all I can ask. Every training
Yeah.
session, she gives me 100%, and
And
that's the thing.
if you have a good club and a good team, because
Yeah,
people don't realize that training a dog to competition level, it is no one person doing this.
exactly. Yeah,
Anytime somebody says, "Yeah, I did it all by myself," they are lying.
yeah, definitely.
It is a team effort to get a dog onto high competition level, hands down, because you don't see everything. When you handle a dog, you don't see all, the little crabbing here and there, or the position a little off, or the head position off, and these days it's easy to lose points for head position alone.
Yeah, and they're smart. Because in the UK it's so wet. When I was doing her down in motion, because I can't look at her, I'm doing
Mhm.
focused heel work. So I'm looking ahead, I tell her to down, and then after maybe 3 or 4 steps, or whatever, I'll look behind me and she's down. When I started, and at the club, perfect down in motion. When I started recording myself, she would sit because she doesn't like the wet ground. So she would sit, and as soon as she saw my head start to turn, she'd quickly down. So of course I'd turn, she'd be down, and I'd reward her, and she hadn't done it right at all. So
Yeah.
you need people there always, and I'm very, very lucky. I've got an absolutely fantastic club. My trainer is wonderful, and him and his wife, I think, have been to the last 20, probably qualified or been either one of them, team captain or whatever, to the last 20 world championships in IGP, usually for German Shepherds. They'll go. So, they've got so much experience, and, my trainer's been so kind with his time and his knowledge. So I've got the best trainer in the UK. It's up to me now. It's up to me to
That is
be.
all you can wish for, right?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
all you can wish for.
Yeah. I'm very
You
lucky,
know.
and great support from other club members, so
And
it's
that's what it takes. And there's this other trainer in the UK, Obsidian.
yes, yeah.
He travels every month to Holland
Yeah.
to a trainer there to help him to compete with his dog. You know,
Yeah.
some of the best look for help.
Oh,
You know,
every trainer, I mean, my trainer has trainers.
yes,
We always have about 3 really, really good trainers at the club at any one time. It doesn't matter how good you are, somebody will be watching you and helping you. It
yes,
doesn't matter if you've been to 20 world championships and been in the top 10, we still need a trainer. Ivan
correct.
Babalanov will have people watching every single session he does and giving
And
him
film
feedback.
everything, because you can
Everything.
always go
Film
back and
everything.
analyze, and
Yeah, I film
that
everything now as well.
yes, that is
And make
it's a
notes.
great help. It's a great help because even if the team is limited, you can always go back in the video and check and say, okay, you see this, we have to work on this.
Yeah.
You know,
And I was shocked when I saw that bitch not downing and just sitting and hovering because she didn't like the wet ground. And as soon as she saw a slight turn of my head, she was just down immediately. I couldn't believe she'd probably been doing this for months.
if
Never
you
did it at a club.
if you look at
Smart enough
the
to know
if you look at the video in I posted it on Facebook recently with Ninja doing his BH.
it.
You'd see that for the sit, I stopped, because they had changed the rules
Yes.
in the BH mere days before Ninja did his
Mhm.
BH. So he was accustomed to the sit in motion and the down in motion.
Yeah.
But then they said, you have to stop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have to
So
stop
there are
and say
days
it. And
before.
he's not accustomed to that. So when I stopped, he put one foot forward because he thought it's going to be a down.
Yeah.
And so, but luckily for me, he remained with that foot in that position until I came back. He didn't move
Yeah.
after that. He
Yeah.
froze. So that shows
Yeah.
the intelligence of them, right? It's like, whoop, okay,
Yeah.
let me just stay here.
Oh,
You
the
know,
less said
and
about our BH, the better. She was in heat, and it was the worst performance of our, that we've made the last year, and it was just one of those things. It's in my nightmares. I'm never going to think about it again. But we've got our IGP one in 2 weeks. I've done
okay,
the beatings and tracking section of it with her at the last trial. She wasn't ready for protection at the last trial, but I did the beatings and tracking because it was very good for me to have a run through of all the rules and just do it. So she qualified in both, but she'll do the full IGP one this time. I just need a little bit more time to get control on her protection because she's got a lot of drive, and she likes
right.
to think that if she could run around biting people, life would be perfect. But unfortunately, that's not really the way IGP works.
No,
But I have control now, so I feel more confident now. But we'll see. I shouldn't speak too soon. But
nah, I'm sure she will excel.
we'll see.
I have a friend who breeds German Shepherds and also trains them. And I made a T-shirt for him because he always said, drive fixes everything. If your dog
Yeah.
has drive, there is nothing you can't teach.
Yeah.
And it's very true. And my
Every-
slogan is no drive, no joy. I have it on every jersey,
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make a T-shirt separate with that as well.
That would be really good. I'll buy one if you do that. It's really good, definitely.
Yeah, because it's so fitting, right? As a trainer, if I go to a customer and I go to a dog that, meh,
Yeah.
keep your food, I'm not really hungry, and watches the ball roll past, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
then I'm already going, what did I get myself into with this dog? Why did I take on this client?
Yeah.
Because it's the most frustrating training session if a dog is not motivated by anything. And there's no
Especially-
drive.
Yeah.
No drive, and it's a big dog, and it's like,
Yeah, like a livestock guardian breed. A lot of those don't have drive for food and they don't have drive for balls. And they're huge. They're about, 14 stone and they're just massive and they have no drive and they just look at you. It's like, okay, what do we do? But then you can always, one I had, I found out what he really liked, which was other dogs, and I've got a very, very tolerant female bitch. You need a little bit of fear of the car, so he didn't want to go in the car. He had a bad experience with a crash, and we used my bitch sat her in the car, and gradually got a bit of confidence to go up in the car and then get in it, and then he was fine. But she was his incentive because he really liked other dogs, and that was his motivator. So sometimes you have to be a bit creative in finding what motivates him. And he didn't necessarily want to play with her. He just liked hanging out beside her, And she's very stable, likes other dogs. And
I came across a shepherd who was not food motivated. He was not toy motivated, but he loved protection work.
Yeah.
So basic obedience was a decoy shadowing us. And every time he did something correct and needed to get rewarded, I sent him on a bite.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So biting the sleeve was his reward then.
Yeah.
Even though we were doing obedience.
Yeah, long path to do your obedience that way.
Yeah, I just did the basics with him, and that was it. I said, okay, it will get too expensive that way, because we have to pay the decoy every session.
Yeah, that's very expensive. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's been an
All
absolute
right.
delight to talk to you, and I look forward to your T-shirt. Definitely,
Yes,
I have to
thank
get
you.
that. Yeah.
And I will put out
Right, tomorrow.
a review of the book on my social media by the end of the week.
Oh, thank you.
And I will put out a review of the book on my social media by the end of the week.
Thank you.
And I will put out a review of the book on my social media by the end of the week. Yes, we will publish that. And write more like this.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. No, I'm enjoying reading it.
I'm
It's
glad. I'm glad.
because when I read it, my family's commenting and I'm reading it and I'm nodding my head while I'm reading. It's like, yep, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'm going through the book.
Yeah.
You know?
Good.
And yeah, no, it's well written, and I like the hidden humor in it.
Yeah.
It makes me smile, and even though it's a very serious topic, yeah, and there is nothing disparaging in it. It is just the truth,
Yes.
and that's what I like about it. You know, it is not. It is a good book that debunks a lot of things without getting personal in any way.
Yes, because I think
Yeah.
I respect. I should respect other human beings, and everyone has their viewpoint, and I think people should be free to live and let live. But it's whenever people start infringing on my rights and saying, especially with something that isn't true, and saying, "Well, I want to take your enjoyment of life and your lifestyle with your high drive dogs. I want to take all that away from you." That isn't, somebody doesn't have the right to do that to me. And I just worry that the more this happens in more and more countries, there's going to be fewer and fewer places left where we can actually live in reality.
I believe that in the long run, this whole force-free thing is gonna be just another fad
Yes,
that has come, is there, and will go.
yes, yeah,
And the rest of us who trained before will train after.
yeah, yeah.
I
Definitely.
firmly believe that common sense has to prevail at some time. Reality has to prevail,
Yes,
and the more it's being talked about, the more it will prevail.
yeah. Because we live
Right.
in the real world, and unfortunately, there is no getting around discomfort and pain and stress, and we need some stress to build resilience. And if we didn't have things that went wrong in life, we wouldn't appreciate the things that went right.
The
Uh,
best trained people talk about stress.
yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you ask a special operator, don't you get afraid every now and again? He says, of course, every time we go out, but that is what keeps us alive.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they, he said it gets dangerous when we are not afraid.
Yes, very much.
And
So.
dangerous for us, not for others. It gets dangerous for us if we're not
And as
afraid.
dog trainers as well, I think when
Yeah.
you're doing, we always have to be aware of our own limitations. And sometimes getting older, I think, okay, that the sort of really dangerous dogs aren't for me anymore. I just like nice, balanced, predictable dogs I can train well. I don't mind a hard dog, but I don't like dogs that are unpredictable. Really,
I learned that the hard way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was living in Greece and I was asked to train 2 Kangals in Istanbul.
Oh,
And
that's
they
a
were
trick.
they were puppies. They were 7 months old. But at
Good.
that 7 months, they're the size of a full-grown Rottweiler,
Well,
and
yeah,
they're very aggressive. And they were not from some watered-down, kennel in the U.S. They came from a border region between Turkey and Iraq, from some farm.
yeah, yeah.
They're the true Kangals, right? And
Yeah, I don't know why I would like to train.
and
When
I
I was
was
17, it's
I
stupid.
was in my early 20s and I felt
Yeah,
invincible when it comes to dogs, right? There's
you
no dog
always were when you were that age.
there's no dog I wouldn't take on. And
Yeah,
so, I tried the food thing, put the food up in the air to get the dog to sit, and he didn't want to sit, and then put the other hand on his rear end to kind of gently push on the rope, and I almost lost my hands. That dog
yeah.
went to town on me.
Oh,
I had to
dog.
pull up the leash and say, hey.
Yeah,
Then I was
yeah.
taken so by surprise, and with the tenacity that this dog came with as a 7-month-old puppy,
Yeah,
that it was
yeah.
it was a wake-up call, right? So, okay, maybe I'm not as invincible as I thought, and there's dogs that will surprise me, and I have a different respect for guardian breeds ever since, right?
Yes.
And I've trained the Caucasian mountain dog, and because of my experience with the Kangal, I approached this dog differently.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out well. So, you live and you learn.
You do, and I think that is important. That there are people who, as I say, I really specialize in a Rottweiler, and I think it's nice when you have a breed that you really love, that you really understand sort of inside and out, and that you're passionate about. Because, I could, train a livestock guardian or whatever, but that isn't my passion. That isn't my knowledge. I don't have the knowledge base of somebody that's had this breed for 30 years. How could I ever compete with that?
Yes.
But, with the Rottweiler, it's a breed I absolutely love. So, Rottweiler owners that need some help, I am here.
And they're fundamentally different dogs, huh? Even though people
Yeah,
always compare them. But a Rottweiler is a working dog.
definitely.
They're
Yeah.
genetically hardwired to work with us. Whereas a livestock guardian, especially the more exotic ones like the Caucasian mountain dog, the
Yeah.
Kangal, the Alabai, they're dogs that work independently. They don't need you. Their
They don't
objective
need
is
people. No, exactly.
if you don't live on this farm or in this house and you approach it, I need to deal with you.
Yeah. And they
Right?
may only eat every couple of days. They're not really food orientated because
No.
they're genetically, the way they are, they don't necessarily want to eat every day. Well, they might want
Yeah.
to, but in their life, the way they've been bred for however long, they cut their own food, and so
Yeah.
they don't want to.
And they live among the animals that they protect.
Yeah, yeah, they're fantastic, absolutely amazing dogs, fantastic. But I don't have an insight into their mind the way I do a Rottweiler.
And funny enough, I have a friend who did this with German Shepherds. He breeds German Shepherds,
Yeah,
and he also sells eggs. So he has free-range chicken, and so they live outside and they eat the things that they're supposed to be eating, like bugs and
yeah,
worms and
yeah.
all those things. And in order for them not to get stolen, he put a couple of highly protection-trained shepherds in there, and they grew up as puppies. They have a sheltered area, but they grew up among the chicken.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
So they don't go after the chicken.
No,
They
no, they
live
don't.
among
No.
the chicken. They play with the chicken, and nobody else can come in there.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like two bad junkyard dogs surrounded by chicken,
Good for chickens, yeah.
and it's amazing to watch. It's
Yeah.
amazing to watch. The
I mean, that's the
intelligence of the
thing.
dogs and how they can operate independently. There's, he doesn't have to tell them anything. They just know what to do,
Yeah.
and that's what they're doing.
The dogs are such amazing creatures, and we underestimate them in a lot of ways.
We
And
do.
we are lucky to have the love of a creature as wonderful as a dog.
Well said. All right. So it's been an absolute blast. I really enjoyed this, and
It's been great fun.
you
You
know,
must invite me to. You must invite me to do a workshop in Trinidad.
yes, and it's
So-
it's been one of the fastest 2 hours I spent on a podcast.
Yeah, it has. It's been 2 hours now, but it's been great
Yes,
fun. I've
yes. It didn't feel like it. I'm now looking at the recording there. Yes, and I'm sure we will do this again
Definitely, yeah.
in the future. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy, and you have
Well, that's-
multiple job titles, so I can only imagine. So I'm thankful that you made the time available to be on this podcast. And yeah,
No, it's been
Thank you
fantastic.
very
It's been my
much.
pleasure. It's been great fun. I've had a good laugh. We've set the world to rights. And and here's me now come to say hello. It's got a big paw now in my paw. But thank you so much. It's been a real honor to be on your podcast. Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Okay, you too.